We were camping outside of Boston, and the day before we were right near the hotel that many of the terrorists had stayed at.
On 9/11, I was working at Madison Square Garden. We were loading the last truck for the Michael Jackson 30th anniversary show. And all of a sudden, the guy comes running down the ramp, says, "You're not going to believe what happened. A plane just hit the World Trade Center."
On 9/11, I was in my office on the 73rd floor of Tower 2.
Oh.
Where were you when the terrorists struck
still.
on 9/11? We were right here. We had just concluded an interview with Mr. Peanut and also the wife of one of the stars of the music group Matchbox 20.
Right, Marisol Thomas.
That's right.
And Marisol was sitting here, and all of a sudden, we're watching these. We got this little monitor with 20 different boxes, and we see and smoke, and we can't. What's happening?
Hey, say hello to Jeanette Reynolds. She has written a book called Where Were You on 9/11? Because Jeanette is just like Where Were You when Kennedy was assassinated? It seems like people remember.
When Reagan was shot. I mean,
absolutely.
It's this decade's question.
It's rated in the top 10, and I hate to even say that this is rated, but because this event stands alone, clearly. But, you know, we're talking about something that has just turned this world on an axis.
It changed us. It changed us all, I think forever.
Yeah. I know for me it was a life-transforming experience in a lot of ways, on an emotional level and a spiritual level, and that thread is throughout this book. There are a lot of people that had very extreme and diverse backgrounds and opinion, but after that event happened, it's just really interesting to see their personality come alive in an impact of such magnitude.
In your book, you have a number of famous Americans and some not so famous, but people with first-hand accounts tell where they were on 9/11 and how they found out about what went haywire. You've got a story of one woman who was on the tarmac at Ronald Reagan International Airport down in Washington about to take off, and then suddenly saw the smoke over at the Pentagon, and they never did take off. But also you tell the story of Victoria Tenzing, who's been on this program many times, the wife of Joe diGenova, and she had a special connection because they were very close to the Olsons.
Absolutely.
Barbara Olson.
Barbara Olson.
Ted Olson.
Victoria's a good friend. She's actually formerly from Detroit, and I'm formerly from Detroit. I now live out in Montana, but we had a bit of a connection there. And I had interviewed her before because just prior to writing this book, I had concluded the sale of an interview magazine that I'd founded in 1994. So writing this book was the last thing on my mind. I didn't really want to interview anybody else. But this tragedy hit. I called on Victoria and a large group of people that I had interviewed before. And Victoria had gone on book tour with Barbara Olson when Barbara Olson had just come out with that book.
They were going to go to Italy on a bike tour together as a family. And so she called Ted and said, tried to get a hold of Ted Olson, the Solicitor General for the United States, and wound up with one of his children on the phone and said, is Ted okay? Yeah, he's fine.
Yeah.
Is Barbara okay? No. And then she knew that those stories that she had heard were true. That she had died on the airplane, crashing into the Pentagon.
You got it. And Steve,
and telling her husband, you know, that
she'd been working the phone,
trying to tell him, trying to alert others that there was a hijacking, and not just to worry about her plane, but to check the other airplanes, you know, to the very end, trying to help others.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we see Victoria, you know, you've had her on the show, so you know, she's a very eloquent woman, high-powered attorney in D.C., but when, again, that tragedy hit, you got to see this other side of people that you don't normally see. And there was a lot of times during these interviews that people would just kind of break down and we'd have to really kind of stop things.
Finally, what about faith? Because an atheist organization over in New Jersey is threatening to file suit if there was a steel beam perfectly in the shape of a cross, I mean, absolutely symmetrical, that was found amid other smaller crosses down at Ground Zero in the rubble. Just a natural phenomenon there. And they're saying, if you leave it there, we're suing. And, you know, when people said, look, it gives solace, it gives comfort, they said, well, yeah, well, where was God 9/11? Did people start questioning their faith?
Absolutely. I think this event polarized people. It either drew out people to believe stronger in their faith or to go the other way, and that, you know, and actually Randy Weaver, one of his stories in the book, which is quite interesting.
The book is called Where Were You on 9/11? Jeanette Reynolds, we thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.